Hi, it's Kristen. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video where we will be discussing the 5 best books that I read whenever I got my English major. I have been graduated from college for going on 3 years now, and in those past 3 years I've been a teacher. But before then I was getting my degree in English education, and liberal arts. So I triple majored. And today I really just want to share with you the books that stuck out to me and have stood with me now that I've completed my degree. So I've got 5 books for you today that are truly the best, the creme de la crop of my education. And to start off, we're going to start with one that I actually read before I even went to college, but I had to read it in college and it was just as good as it was the first time I ever read it. And that is, of course, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. The story of a girl who is orphaned, raised in an unloving home, then sent to an even more unloving boarding school, and then eventually makes her way into a man's house as a governess where she finds all sorts of mysteries. It is a gothic literature tale and very atmospheric. One of the most famous classics probably, but it's my favorite because Jane Eyre is just a woman who will stick to her principles no matter what, and I find that kind of belief so strong. And this book has really just been, it's one of those books that I would say define me as a person, and so I definitely think it is worth your time. Then in one of my courses on British literature, I had 2. It was like kind of ancient British literature and then modern. And then the more modern British literature, we discussed Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I really enjoyed this book for a lot of reasons. Basically, you should know, but it follows the story of a scientist named Victor Frankenstein who creates this creature from like body parts that he machines together, and he reanimates this creature, and it's all about like good versus evil and like the kind of morals and how far you could be willing to go in the name of science. What I love about it is the atmosphere. This book is so dark, and the moors and the rocks crashing against the shore, and it's like brutality of nature and brutality of what it means to be a human, and it's just a raw, bleeding, beautiful book that I highly recommend. The next book I read in my American Lit class, I had 2 of those as well, and I think this was also in the second one, and it is Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I love this story. It's a coming-of-age story about one of the best characters, in my opinion, of all time, Holden Caulfield, a guy who is a little bit troublesome, but it's mainly because he is like testing the limits of, you know, like any teenager would. And he also has this beautiful, pure look on life, and that kind of creates some issues for him. So it's a coming-of-age story that really takes place over the course of a few days, but it follows what happens whenever a boy who's been mostly sheltered goes out into the city, and kind of his whole view of the world changes, and the cruelty of life has a profound effect on him. He wants to be one of those who protects the purity of others, of children. He wants to be a catcher in the rye, but he realizes that there are some things that stand in the way of that. The next book was one that I read in American Lit 1, or maybe it was American Lit 2. Most of my favorite books did come from American Lit. This one is My Antonia by Willa Cather. It's like a prairie story. It takes place in the Midwest, and it follows this woman named Antonia, who is the daughter of Bohemian immigrants. And it's, think of like a coming-of-age story, but also like a romance and also like a prairie story. There's a lot of those same kind of themes of the destruction of innocence and rural life versus city life, and the brutality of like living on a farm and the brutality of nature. And most of all, it's a story of endurance and kind of making a name for yourself in the world. It's a very gritty, beautiful book, and I highly recommend it. And finally, the last book that I want to discuss is The Awakening by Kate Chopin. This is another one of those books that I read in an American Lit class, but I had read it before. And the first time I read it, it really struck me, and it struck me in the same way the second time I read it. The Awakening is about a woman who finds herself in a marriage that she's no longer happy with, and it's all about how she awakens from like her domestic role into a role that's kind of like independent and goes against the current of society. And it's about what happens whenever a woman steps out of her comfort zone, the mold that has been so carefully shaped for her, and the consequences of that. I personally think it's such a profound and powerful book, and I think that's a thread that you see in all of these. They have like this layer of profoundness and kind of like, I don't know, this like painful beauty. And I wonder if that's what even makes them classics in the first place. I don't know, but I do know that all of them are worth their salt. And out of all the books I studied during my English degree, these 5 truly stood the test of time. I would love to know what you think about these books if you've read them, or if you are an English major, I'd love to know what the top 5 books you read during your major. And otherwise, that will be it for now. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.